Going to go and do a review of this Everila bird cage I purchased off eBay 2 weeks ago. And right off the bat, I don't recommend it. And the reason for it is just quality issues throughout the cage pretty much. And I'll explain more in detail. Now I really actually want to like this cage because it's appropriate bar spacing. It was 3/8. It also was appropriate size, which is wider instead of just being taller, which a lot of cages are. And this was the reason why I really want to like the cage, and I actually purchased it because it was only one of the few, and there's really not many that had the appropriate bar spacing that is in this configuration. So that's why I picked this cage. Now unfortunately it has just too many quality issues to keep it, and the first problem is that the bar thickness and stuff is just not thick enough, and it's very thin material, and it's pretty much easy to move these bars pretty much no effort whatsoever. So you can imagine the cockatiels are going to be doing that all day, and that's what I think they're doing. And a few bars already popped the welds and stuff like that, so there's a few loose bars now. And this cage is only 2 weeks old, so that's one of the problems. The other problem is, and this is actually the first problem, is what I noticed is that this here doesn't line up correctly. It's not because the cage came damaged in shipping, that's just how it came from the factory, and it's this side goes more in and this side pushes out, and that's because the holes don't line up when putting the cage together exactly like it should and stuff, so this doesn't line up either. The second problem is this tray here, and it's very flimsy. Now I guess it'll do the job because it's just a tray that goes in, and there is under support for this tray. But the first tray I got was broken. This was all broken in the front. This was cracked in the middle. Now this is one area where the manufacturer did do good, and they sent out a new tray with no problem after notifying them of the issue and stuff, and I ended up getting a new tray really quickly, so it isn't a really big deal, but that's one of the issues with it. Now I do like the stand. The stand is fine because you can easily just go and move the cage off the stand and stuff like that. And the stand is built reasonably well for what it is. So stand I don't have no problem with. It's actually the cage that I have a problem with. Now here's another example, and hold on. Let me go ahead and try to get it there and see if I can show you, but that's the problem with pretty much a bar there that's lazy pretty much, and you can see there how it just goes in. Now there's a few of those throughout this cage, and this is not even really bent, it's just that's how it came. The other issue is, as you can see here, and this is the main reason why I'm returning, is you got loose bars throughout the cage here, and they broke the weld already. And then here you go, I got two of them being held right now by this piece here, and I just got them held against this right here, so that way it holds those bars in. And there's a few throughout the cage. There's a few here, there's a few there. I mean, it seems like a new one I'm finding every day as I clean this cage. Another one popped the weld and stuff like that. And it's because of the thinness of this material. And here's another one. And I just went ahead and poked it, and you can see right there. You know, and that's just how bad this cage is pretty much. It's just really cheap. The welds are not holding well together, and the cage is pretty much falling apart. The other thing is too, there's no stopper. Like this here just goes up and down, so of course the cockatiel wanted to, they could get smart enough to lift this up and just come right out. Now it's not a problem with me because I let them out all day pretty much almost. And you know how if I'm at work or something and they get out, they just pretty much stay confined to this room anyway because I close the door. And I take the bigger birds with me, so it's really not a problem. But still, anyway, for those that, you know, want to keep their cockatiels in the cage, this obviously is not probably going to work. But that'll be easy to rectify and stuff like that. You can put something there to keep them from opening and it won't be a problem. But if you look at the cage here, shockingly enough, this was actually a cheaper cage. But it's just way better built. You can see there, you can't bend the bars that easy. And then here, they got a stopper that keeps them from essentially opening up the cage and escaping it. Where this one here, they can just slide this right open if they want to, and that's it. They're out pretty much, and that's it. It doesn't take much time for them to learn how to open that and get out. They're pretty smart and they will figure it out. Well, and then let's go for another issue which I noticed. And here's your instructions. This is it. And they at least got 3 to 4 different size screws and stuff, and they don't tell you which size screws to use, so you gotta figure that out. Now, thankfully, it didn't take me too long to figure out which screws were, especially being the fact I built a lot of cages. But for someone that's just building a bird cage and really not mechanically inclined, they're gonna find it hard to put this cage together because they're gonna see all these different screws, and it's gonna take them time to figure out where these screws go to actually assemble a cage. Now, if you look at appropriate one, let's go to automatic, because this is the cage that is gonna replace this one. I'm gonna move everything into this cage after I get them used to it. But you can see here it's all laid out nicely. They got a breakdown diagram where everything goes, and you can pretty much figure it out easily. And thankfully, the screws are only 2 sizes: the very small ones for the seed tray and the big ones for the rest of the cage. There's really not much to figure out there. So this cage is, of course, a lot easier to put together. It does still require, you know, it probably helps if you have a second person to help you hold pieces so you can actually go ahead and put this cage together. But you can actually put it together by yourself if you wanted to too. I put enough of these cages by myself, no problem, pretty quickly. But that's another problem, is the instructions on this particular cage, very lacking. Doesn't really give you any detail how to put it together and stuff, and you kind of got to figure it out on your own. So overall, it's the main reasons why I don't recommend this cage, even though it's appropriate bar spacing, and I really want to like this cage because it's wide and everything else. It's just the build quality is less to desire pretty much, and you know, I mean, these bars here are very thin and everything else, and it's just not gonna hold up. And this is only 2 weeks old, and I already got about 5-6 bars that already popped the weld and stuff like that. And it wasn't like that when I got it, because there was no bars that popped out as I checked the cage thoroughly as I put it together. It's just happening over time. It could be the cockatiels popping them, or it could just be that they're just popping on their own. But either way it goes, it's gonna be a problem. They should have made these here thicker. The weld quality should have been better, and it wouldn't be a problem. This cage would hold up fine, and it is, as far as the size go and everything, appropriately designed. So if it wasn't for the quality, it would be actually a really good cage. But due to the quality just bad, I can't recommend this cage. And I recommend you going with a name brand like King Cage or this particular cage. There's several other cages on the market. I'm not gonna go into detail into them, but you know, you're better off just spending more money and getting something better. In this case, yeah, it wasn't really about the money. It was more about the wideness of the cage, and that's why I went with this cage, because I saw how wide it was, and compared to everything else, even like $400 or $500 cages I was looking for, because I was trying to find a cage that was wide enough, but with the correct bar spacing and stuff, so like I can mount their toys and they don't stick their heads through the bar though. But this was one of the only cages I could find that actually met every requirement. I thought, okay, it'll be okay probably for them, but it turns out it's total junk, and I don't recommend it to anyone.